I don't know how long he was down there. That's the part that still gets me. Not the moment I saw him, not the way he looked at me. It's the idea that he had been there. For hours. Maybe longer. I was 11 years old. My parents had just separated that spring. My mom and I had moved into a rental house on the edge of town. Small place, 2 bedrooms upstairs, a finished basement below. The basement was mostly storage, old boxes, holiday decorations, my mom's workout equipment she never used, a beat-up couch she said she'd get rid of. Eventually, she never did. My mom worked late most nights. She was a nurse, so I'd get home from school around 3 and have a few hours alone before she got back. I wasn't scared of being alone. I was 11, not 6. I thought I was fine. That Tuesday started like every other. I came home, dropped my backpack, made a bowl of cereal, sat in the living room and watched TV. Normal. But then, I heard something from below me. A slow, dragging sound, like something being moved across a concrete floor. I muted the TV, sat completely still, and listened. Silence. I told myself it was the water heater. Old houses made sounds like that. I turned the volume back up and tried to forget it. But I couldn't focus on the show. I kept glancing at the basement door. It was just off the kitchen. A plain wooden door with a brass knob. Nothing scary about it except I couldn't shake the feeling that something was behind it. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a glass of water, and I stood there for a second, staring at that door. I told myself, go check. You'll feel better once you check. I opened it, reached in, hit the light switch. The fluorescent bulb flickered once, twice, then filled the stairwell with cold white light. I looked down. Nothing. Just the stairs, just the boxes, the couch, the treadmill with the cracked handle. I exhaled. Stupid. I almost laughed at myself. I went back to the couch, started on my homework. My mom called around 5 to say she'd be home by 7. I said fine, no worries, see you then. And I meant it. I really wasn't worried anymore. But around 6, I got up to use the bathroom, and on my way back through the kitchen, I noticed the basement door was open. Not wide open, just cracked 3, maybe 4 inches. I stopped walking. I hadn't opened that door since earlier. I was sure of it. I stood there and stared at that thin strip of darkness. And I listened. Nothing. No sounds, no movement, just silence from the other side. But something inside me said, do not go near it. I don't know what it was. Call it instinct. Call it whatever you want. But every part of me said, back away. I went to the front door, unlocked it, and I sat on the front step outside and waited for my mom. I told myself it was nothing, that I'd left it open without realizing, that the draft from the kitchen window had pushed it. I told myself a lot of things. My mom pulled in around 6:50. She could see on my face that something was wrong. I told her about the door. She didn't dismiss me. She pulled out her phone and called our neighbor Dave. He came over with a flashlight. He and my mom went down together. I waited in the kitchen. I heard them moving around, opening doors, moving boxes. And then, I heard my mom's voice change. That's the only way I can describe it. It just changed. They found him behind the water heater, tucked back in the corner. A man in his mid-30s. No shoes. Sitting with his knees pulled to his chest, like he'd been waiting, completely calm. He'd broken in through the basement window the night before, had spent almost a full day down there. While I was upstairs, eating cereal, doing homework, watching TV, the police came. They took him away. I sat in my neighbor's living room wrapped in a blanket and just stared at the floor. My mom kept saying it was okay, that we were safe, that nothing happened. And she was right. Nothing happened. But nothing happened because I never went back down those stairs. Because something told me not to. And I still think about that. I still think about what could have happened if I hadn't listened. Most people think of their grandparents' house as a safe place, a warm place. Mine was too, until one summer night when I was 14, and I realized we weren't the only ones in it. My grandparents had this old farmhouse in rural Ohio, wide porch, fields out back, a detached garage full of junk my grandfather refused to throw away, and a basement long and narrow, with one bare bulb on a pull cord and a smell like damp wood and old paint. Nobody went down there much, there was no reason to. My family made the trip every summer, my parents, my two younger sisters, and me. We'd spend a week, eating too much, staying up too late, playing cards at the kitchen table until midnight. It was one of those simple good things. The kind of week I looked forward to every year. That particular summer, my cousin Brett was there too. He was 16, thought he was much cooler than me. We didn't really get along, but we tolerated each other. On the third night, we were sitting outside on the porch after dinner. Brett was on his phone. I was watching fireflies. My grandparents had gone to bed early. My parents were inside watching TV. My sisters were asleep. And then we heard it, a knock. From below us. We looked at each other. Brett said, "Did you hear that?" I said, "Yeah." We both looked down at the porch boards. The basement sat directly under us. We listened. Silence. Then it came again. 2 slow knocks. Deliberate. Brett said it was probably an animal, a raccoon or something that got in through the old coal chute window on the south side. My grandfather never sealed it properly. Made sense. I wanted it to make sense. But then we heard something else. Not knocking. Something slower. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps, moving across the basement floor. Brett stood up. I grabbed his arm. I said, "Don't." He shook me off, said I was being ridiculous. He went inside and came back with a flashlight, and before I could say anything, he opened the basement door off the back hallway and started down the stairs. I stood at the top. I watched the flashlight beam sweep across the floor below. Old shelving units, my grandfather's tools, mason jars. Brett said, "There's nothing here." He moved the beam to the left, then the right. Then, he went quiet. I said, "Brett." He didn't answer. I said his name again. He said, "There's a sleeping bag down here." I didn't move. He said, "A sleeping bag and a backpack, against the far wall. Someone has been sleeping down here." I made him come upstairs immediately. We woke my dad. He didn't believe us at first, but he went down, came back up with a look on his face I'd never seen before. He woke my grandfather. They called the county sheriff. The deputy who showed up knew the area. He wasn't surprised. Said there had been a transient in the area all summer. Breaking into sheds, garages, empty houses, looking for places to sleep. When they searched the basement, he was gone. The coal chute window was open. He'd heard us. He'd run. But he'd been there, in my grandparents' basement, potentially for days, while we ate dinner above him. While my sisters slept just above that ceiling, while my grandfather sat in his chair and watched the news, not knowing there was someone beneath his feet. My grandfather sealed that window the next morning. We didn't talk about it much after that. But I noticed something for the rest of that trip. Every time we sat at the kitchen table, every time we laughed at something on TV, I'd find myself going quiet, listening, wondering if somewhere beneath us, something was listening back. I used to think the scariest thing a kid could experience was a nightmare, something your brain made up in the dark. I was wrong. The scariest thing is something real, hiding in the dark while you walk right past it. I was 12. My best friend Caden and I were inseparable that summer. He lived 3 houses down. We spent every day together, riding bikes, playing games, getting into the kind of harmless trouble that kids get into in small towns. His family had a big 2-story house, way bigger than mine. He had 3 siblings, a huge backyard, and a basement that made every kid in the neighborhood nervous. It was unfinished. Concrete walls, a single bulb in the center, shelves of old paint cans and car parts along one wall, and in the far corner, behind an old chest freezer, a small room, more like a closet really. No door, just an opening in the concrete block wall. Dark Cold Caden's dad kept his extra tools in there. Nobody liked going near it. That August, we decided to play manhunt. 4 of us. Me, Caden, and 2 brothers from down the street named Marcus and Joel. One person hides anywhere in or around the house. The others count to 100 and search. The rule was you had to stay on the property, and you couldn't hide in Caden's parents' room. Everything else was fair game. First 2 rounds were normal. Marcus hid in the attic crawl space. Caden squeezed himself into the kitchen cabinet under the sink. We were laughing. It was a good night. One of those nights where everything feels easy. My turn to hide. I had a plan. I was going to go for the basement. I figured none of them would want to search down there for long. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen junk drawer and headed down. The bulb was on. I didn't turn it off. I just moved past the shelves, past the freezer, and slipped into that back room. I crouched down behind a metal shelf unit, killed my flashlight, and waited. I could hear them upstairs, counting. Then footsteps as they spread out to search. A few minutes passed, I heard Joel shout from somewhere upstairs, Marcus's voice answering. Normal. But then I noticed something. I wasn't alone in that little room. I don't know how I knew. I just felt it. That change in the air, like something heavy shifting nearby. And then I heard it, breathing, slow and quiet, coming from the corner behind me. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just sat there frozen, listening. And it was definitely there. Steady, slow breathing. From somewhere in the dark, not 4 feet away from me. I didn't scream. I don't know how. I just stood up slowly, walked out of that little room, past the freezer, past the shelves, up the stairs. I shut the basement door behind me and said, I give up, I'm done hiding. Caden laughed and said that was too easy. I said yeah, and then I told his dad. His dad went down with a utility flashlight and a bat. He was down there for almost 5 minutes. When he came back up, he was on the phone. He told us all to go to Caden's room and close the door. There was a man in that back room, crouched in the corner, just sitting there in the dark. He didn't say anything when Caden's dad found him. He just stood up and walked upstairs without a word. Like he'd been expecting it, like he'd done this before. The police came. They took him. Caden's dad stood on the porch with his arms crossed, watching the cruiser back out of the driveway. None of us kids said anything. Later that night, lying in my own bed, I thought about how long I'd been in that room with him. 5 minutes, maybe more. 2 feet of darkness between us. His breathing in my ear, and me, not knowing. I thought about what might have happened if I'd flicked my flashlight on, if I'd looked in that corner, if he'd decided I was a threat. I don't play hide and seek anymore. I know that sounds ridiculous for a grown adult to say, but it's the truth. Some things you can't just shake off. Some nights, you close your eyes, and you're back in that basement, back in the dark, listening.